Hello everybody, my name's Link, here to talk about both new and old anime you might not have heard of. You know when you get into an anime having some sort of expectations based on the tags, promotional pictures, trailers, and summary? Yeah. どうにかなる日々 is a movie that consists of three short stories, featuring people from all walks of life and their experiences with love and sexuality, giving us a brief glimpse into the time that person found someone special, but not necessarily what comes after. This movie, this movie. I don't even know where to start, but with a fair warning that I will technically be spoiling a good chunk of the movie to discuss it. So here's the timestamps for when I rated and the suggestions on how to watch it. The stories are preceded by these cute little cards, so I'm gonna treat it as the title cards for the stories just to make it easier. The first story that I call Happy centers around a girl named Etchan. I'm not kidding, they don't even bother to give you their full names and it pains me. Who was invited to her ex-high school girlfriend Yuri's wedding. While crying at the venue's bathroom about it, she met a beautiful girl named Aya-chan, who quickly realized that she was crying over her past flame with Yuri as she's someone on the same boat, but is keeping it together way better. The two quickly hit it off to be both bitter and hurt, and then some, into the night, quickly following it off with a date the next day, and then to just chill at each other's house, where they have another go at it. And that's like the entirety of the plot. That's literally all that happens in the first 15 minutes of the show. I could tell from the slow and mellow opening alone that it wasn't really aiming for the most dramatic showcase in the world. And Etchen and Yuri's relationship was over years ago, so I already kinda assumed that she was only sad for the moment, like a minor sting that came back, but it wasn't like she was cursing Yuri's happiness for finding a man. And it was just a happy coincidence that she happened to literally stumbled into, or, well, stumbled in front of, another one of Yuri's exes as well. And so they had each other to cope with the heartache. The heavily hinted sex scenes came out of nowhere though, and it did catch me off guard. But once I realized what it was, I did end up appreciating it a little. It's pretty rare for an anime to depict sexually active lesbians just having casual sex, and then later on, deciding to actually build something from it. Though, despite the praise, it's pretty much as uncomfortable as when any kind of sex scene jumps into any kind of movie. My gripes with it though is that when they did decide to go to the next step forward, we kinda got a handle on Etchan's character, but not so much for her partner Ayachan. But with how bare bones of a personality Etchen is, then I can only assume Ayachan's on the same boat as her. And the progression was kinda fast, already going to the same effect of, I'm glad I met her, so that she can lead me to you. Kinda deal on like the second night they've known each other. But overall, the casual appreciation for an open and budding lesbian couple who aren't afraid to be sexual with one another was a breath of fresh air. It was about as good as it was gonna get apparently. The second story is what I dubbed Go, focusing more on a middle-aged teacher who's so obviously bored with his life, envious of the youthful students around him, as he hasn't really experienced any of that high school love and drama himself. But after another boring year, one of his students came to him after graduation and confessed that he had feelings for him. And then he turns on giddy teenager mode as he fantasizes about the student and him, only to jump a year later where we see nothing really came of it. And he seems to just regress back into his old mundane cycle of work, various points of each passing year urging him ever so slightly to take a break from his routine. The story ends with him finally taking the initiative and invites this year's class to have an after graduation party, who, for the past year's class, were consistently complaining that their graduation didn't inspire any of them or give them any joy, taking them to go out in a large place to accommodate their large numbers, which he forgot to mention was a refurbished loved hotel. It's rare for an anime to explore the concept of crushes that never really came to fruition, mostly because it's about as boring as you'd expect. From the get-go, it was obvious that the teacher was more in love with the idea of being in love rather than loving the other person. Excited to finally check off that marker on his bucket list. There wasn't even this big dramatic push and pull of whether a teacher-student relationship is acceptable like in Hitarajime My Hero, or even an actual payoff to that confession. And actually, with how the scene was set up where that guy was just laughing at his friends, to him with this blank and almost uncomfortable looking expression, I'm somewhat inclined to believe that the confession was a prank or a dare the other boys pushed onto this poor dude as a last day of school thing. I can maybe imagine this appeals to a certain type of audience, possibly the older demographic who enjoyed the nuance of a similar midlife crisis, in which they're expected to have accomplished something like getting married or having a child, or perhaps just the romanticization of being in a relationship rather than the chemistry between the two people. I'm not entirely sure as a demo romantic. I don't really see the appeal of being giddy over some random student you never really thought about, and suddenly, as he confessed, then he's imagining their future together. It could be different in the manga that these two had some sort of interaction before the graduation, but once again I announce to the world that I am Jared.
What up? I'm Jared, I'm 19, and I never fucking learned how to read.
So my references is this movie only. On to the last story. Technically, these are two stories, but I'll treat it as one, since the second part is technically just the time skip of the same couple. The second half of the movie is what I'll call lucky, and it has caused me to sweat the most. Introduced to us are the grade schoolers Shinchan and Mika-chan doing their summer homework like the good little kids they are. Once Mika leaves, we find out that there's someone living in Shinchan's closet. His cousin Sayako that was thrown out by her father for filming a sex tape. We never find out why exactly she did this, but she has been living with Shinchan's family for the time being, and she amuses herself with tormenting her cousin in some honestly concerning ways, eventually being the catalyst for the two kids to be introduced to sex. Jump a couple of years later when Shinchan and Mika-chan are now middle schoolers. Having been inseparable since their earlier days had the school talking that they were actually dating, as well as the fact that word of Shinchan's cousin starring in a sex video rolling around their class thanks to the fact that Mika-chan can't keep her mouth shut. But as it is with kids these days, hormones and curiosity are getting the best of them, and it shows a somewhat strain in their relationship, as Mika is the more forward one between the two and wants to try it, while Shinchan has his wits and knows that it's better to wait. It ends all in well during their cultural festival, where they were both dubbed as the best sophomore couple, and got a condom as a joke prize, where they said they'd blow it up like a balloon. As it fades into the final title card, Days, giving us the complete title Happy-Go-Lucky Days, the English translation for "どうにかなる日々." Lucky seemed to be the most straightforward amongst all the stories, and also being the owner of the most concrete kind of ending. Listen, there's a conversation to be had on when a kid can learn about their sexuality. Which kid hasn't googled big boobies at the age of 12, looking over their shoulders like their parents would just manifest in thin air to grab them by the neck, even though they made sure to do this extreme heist specifically when their parents were away or asleep? And in that vein, it'd be really great if they can learn about their bodies and their preferences at a young age, with sufficient and reliable information in private. Education is the strongest weapon after all. The problem being is, I don't want to see it. I mentioned before in Happy that the sex scenes were as jarring as they would be as any Western film would throw in one, though they didn't really show us anything past kissing. And thankfully, Lucky didn't go anything even remotely explicit, but the implications were all there, and it made me the tiniest bit uncomfortable, considering these were kids, even fully aware that these are just fictional characters. And more random gripes to the story, Shinchan's dad is such a creep. Who the fuck asks his niece if he can watch the sex video she made, even as a joke? Like, who does that? As much as Sayaka gave me major yikes vibes whenever she's around Shinchan, I also want to know more about her. People who make sex videos don't have to have the deepest reasoning for why they do it. If they love their body enough and don't really mind, then that's on them to go for it. But I feel like the story handled her character a little wonky like, as instead of an empowered young woman, all her reasons to be there is to be the sexual awakening for the two kids and to have sex jokes made around and about her. Maybe there's a chapter in the manga that's for her, but I don't think I'll ever know. So, should you watch "どうにかなる日々"? I'll be rating the shows I cover here with these stars. 1 star is, I suffered for this anime so you don't have to. Something else is worth your time. 3 stars is, definitely give it a go. It was an enjoyable ride despite its flaws, and or it could be covering certain niches you could be interested in. While 5 is just, add it to your anime bible. A show any anime fan should definitely be watching. So listen, Slice of life is a thing. Despite most shows nowadays having that tag also usually accompanying it with romance or comedy, there are a collection of shows that are just 100% pure slice of life, as in we are just looking into a fraction of a whole. It might not be for me, but someone out there loves these kinds of mellow and peaceful types of shows. That being said, I give "どうにかなる日々" a 1 star. Contrary to most shows where it's more enjoyable to run in blind, this movie is best off watched knowing exactly what they're getting into. Expect something slow, something mundane, and don't expect a satisfying ending. Even though this is a movie exploring sexuality and love, it's not here to give you a by of this character's complex backstories or why they were made for each other. And it's more to show you the everyday relationships and troubles one could have without you even knowing about it. And just because I feel like this is the right thing to do for anyone who did skip to the end, warning for just random sex happening. So be wary if you plan to play this on a big screen. So if you do find it interesting enough, or this is that one niche you absolutely love and want to give it a go, then as a friend, I'm obliged to tell you, even though none of them are really that explicit. And that's a wrap on this one, everybody. I try to keep my questions to something related to the anime we're covering this week, but oh god, how does a movie be 60 minutes long and have absolutely nothing about it? So this week's question is, what's your favorite fruit, I guess? We have a lot of fresh fruits here often, and a sweet apple really hits the spot for me. And on occasion when we're feeling fancy, we have some grapes as well. You can follow me on Twitter where I post fan art and the occasional video update. And as always, if you liked the video, don't forget to leave a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more niche anime recommendations you might not have heard of. Bye bye!